Hey everyone, how are you doing? Welcome back. Today we're talking about breaking the glass slipper, understanding eldest daughter syndrome. It's good to see you here. If you're listening in, let me know when you're listening in from. Drop it into the chat. I would love to know. And as you're doing that, if you just want to connect with each other, I also encourage you to do that because this is a space where we can grow and learn from each other, but it is also a place where we can connect with each other because not everyone understands the experiences that we go through as Latinas. And so when you meet other Latinas that kind of get it, it's just about creating community and being in shared experiences. So let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to get the Instagram to work. I just can't seem to get it to live stream there. So it's just good to be able to connect with others that understand some of the experiences that we're going through. So again, welcome for joining today's session. I'm excited to talk about eldest daughter. I am the eldest daughter of 4 siblings, and this topic has been interesting to me for a while, but I had posted a while back on LinkedIn about an experience where I really wanted some validation from my family, in particular my mother, and I didn't get it. And I talked a little about eldest daughter syndrome in that post, and it seemed to resonate with a lot of you. And it certainly has been part of my life experience. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So again, if you're listening, drop in the chat where you're listening from. Well, I'd love to hear where you are. So with that being said, we are talking about breaking the glass slipper, understanding eldest daughter syndrome. And we're going to dive into the unique experiences and challenges faced by eldest daughters, especially if you're coming from parents of, especially if you're a daughter of immigrants. And we're going to explore this. I thought we'd have some fun, but we're going to explore this through drawing parallels between the classic fairy tale Cinderella and our own lives, and using this as kind of a way to explore ways to empower ourselves and even for healing. So before we dive in, I want to hear from you. What aspect, this is the part where you engage in, and here's what I want to know. What aspect of Cinderella's story do you relate to the most? And take a moment to answer in the poll. And I'm going to drop the questions in there. But is it caretaking responsibilities? Is it family expectations? Is it self-silencing? Is it a lack of recognition, sacrificing your personal goals, or silent struggles? What aspect of Cinderella's story do you relate to the most? All right, great. I see some of you joining in. Hi, Olga, Maria, Cindy, Carolina, Isabel, Vanessa. Tell me, do you relate to caretaking responsibilities? Do you relate to high family expectations? Do you relate to a lack of recognition? Sacrificing your personal goals? Or is it a silent struggle? So let me know in the chat. I see some silent struggle, caretaking. All right, so you can continue to drop those in the chat and let me know what it is that you identify with most in Cinderella. Cinderella was my favorite fairy tale growing up. I just really loved it. I love it was the old version, the 1950s cartoon Disney version that I loved. But I want to just get started because some of you might not have seen or read about Cinderella in a very long time, and you might be wondering, like, how does this relate to our experiences? So I'm going to go through that. But before we do, I want to just remind you that if any of this resonates deeply with you and you're looking for personalized support, I am available for one-on-one leadership coaching, confidence coaching, and together we can really look at breaking through some of these barriers and increasing your visibility, because I think that's part of it. And if you're looking, you can throw this in. If you're looking for a speaker for Hispanic Heritage Month, also let me know. And you can just DM me for more information. But to set the stage, let's start looking at Cinderella's story. So I want to just, again, it's been a while, maybe if you haven't listened to the fairy tale, But Cinderella is living with her stepmother and stepsisters. When we see that she is kind of the servant and doing all the things around the house that her sisters and her mother or her stepmother don't want to do, there is this announcement. She meets, right, well, I guess it's depending on what variation. And actually, to be quite honest, I watched Cinderella, one of the more updated versions, just last night, just to make sure that I was telling the story right. But, Cinderella, there's an announcement of this royal ball. Cinderella really wants to go, but her stepsisters and her stepmother lock her up, and so she can't go after they tear her into her dress. And with the help of her fairy godmother, she ends up being able to go to the ball where she gets to dance with the handsome prince. And there's all this transformation that goes on with her dress and the pumpkin carriage, and the footsman. But she must leave the ball before midnight, leaving behind one of her glass slippers as she's running away. And after that, the stepmother locks her up again so that she can't fit in the slipper, because of course the prince wants to find her and find the owner. And the stepsisters want to fit in the slipper, but it doesn't fit. And then finally, Cinderella tries on the slipper and it fits, and she marries the prince, and the Cinderella and the prince live happily ever after. So that's the story, right? And so I want to draw some parallels between Cinderella and the experience of eldest daughters, especially eldest daughters immigrants. There's no prince coming to save you, unfortunately, but there are definitely some things that we can learn from Cinderella's story. And so we're going to break that down. And the first one that I just want to point out to you is, your nickname is Cinderella. I love that, Cynthia. Cynthia says her name is Cinderella. And then Cindy also says that her nickname at home is Cinderella. So that's pretty funny. I love that. And you can feel free to keep sharing in the comments and ask questions. I'll open up for questions at the end. And make sure to connect with each other, because this is all about building comunidad too. So with Cinderella, okay, so there are many parallels, and I think the first one is one that quite a few of you mentioned in terms of how you relate to Cinderella, and that's caretaking responsibilities. Just like Cinderella, many of us as eldest daughters are responsible for things around the house. It could be household chores. It could be taking care of our siblings. It could be helping our parents. A lot of times we're acting as primary caregivers, whether it's helping with homework, cooking meals, looking after the young ones while our parents were at work. I know this was the case for myself. I'm fortunate that I had come from a two-parent household, but my mom worked third shift. My dad worked during the day, although he had split shifts, so he would come home in the middle of the day and then go back to work. But I was often in charge of watching my younger siblings. Again, I'm the oldest of four. I didn't have to do it too much. I will say that I did have to do it some, but I think where in my own situation where I really saw the eldest daughter kind of play out was when it came to helping my mom. I had to fill out a lot of paperwork for my mom, any doctor appointments or school papers or anything like that. I always had to be the one to fill out papers. With was making phone calls, I would sometimes have to do that. Was deciphering, or translating paperwork for my mom. And my mom does speak English, by the way, but she never felt comfortable in certain situations to speak it. So she would want me to be able to articulate things for her. She thought I could do that better. So in a lot of ways, I had to take on the parent role, even though I was still the child. And I especially remember this with one of my siblings who had a IDP, individual development plan at his school. And so my mom, I remember at this time I was a little bit older. I think I was in high school, and my mom asked me to go to this meeting with the different counselors, the teachers, and it was just kind of this whole round room because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to communicate the way that she wanted to. And so she wanted me to be there to help advocate for him. So that was something that I did early on, was, be in a comfortable room, be in a room of people. And then I just learned to kind of be comfortable being surrounded by a lot of different people. And I think that in some ways I was able to mature faster than I needed to. And that did serve me in the way of entering corporate. And I was able to be resourceful and, kind of develop some of those leadership skills. I was a go-getter. I was a problem solver. But the hard part of it was that I had to take on a lot for my mom. And again, I have come from a two-parent household, and my stepdad is American and spoke English, and he was helpful in a lot of ways. But where there was a gap was I was often treated as the other parent. And a lot of times my mom would go to me rather than my stepdad. And so I had an emotional kind of burden that I had to take on for her. And because of that, I had lost a lot of I felt like there was a lack of emotional care that I had. And so I've had to do, as an adult, to be quite honest with you, I've had to do a lot of reparenting and meeting my own needs as an adult. And if you aren't familiar with the term reparenting, that's what it means. It's like you didn't have some certain needs met as a child. And so now as an adult, you're having to take that on for yourself. I don't know if that's anything that any of you might relate to. But that's something that I've really had to work through as an adult. And I'm going to be quite honest with you, it's still a journey for me because some of those emotional needs weren't met. And so I have had to really learn to do that for myself. Again, I had a lot of privilege in some ways because I didn't have to deal with financial issues, but sometimes caretaking can include financial issues, which means like contributing to the household, taking on a job to be able to provide. Language barriers are another issue. I didn't really have to deal with that as much. I did help my mom with some of the translation, but again, she spoke English. And so it was more with certain words maybe, or explaining context of things. And, I did have to help a lot with documentation. Just, my mom can read and write, but it's not super strong because she didn't have access to an education. So those were things that I had to deal with. And feel free to drop in the chat if you feel comfortable. I don't want to pressure anyone, but if you feel comfortable, feel free to drop in the chat some of the challenges that you saw with caretaking. But caretaking is, definitely something that Cinderella did. And as eldest daughters, that's something that we've had to do too. Number 2 is high family expectation. So Cinderella faced high expectations from her step family without any recognition. And very similarly, we're expected to excel academically and professionally in order to honor our parents' sacrifices and oftentimes fulfill their dreams. And I would say that there is an overbearing responsibility that we put on ourselves as a result, or maybe that our family puts on us as eldest daughters. And so we're checking off all the boxes of, getting the degrees and earning money and buying houses and whatever it is. We tend to be overachievers. We are hyper independent. We are overachievers. We're very productive. We make great leaders. We have a whole list of accomplishments that follow us. Again, with everything, there can be two sides of it. The strength was in terms of how it helped me was, I think it introduced me to the concept of excellence, and introduced me to being, a leader, being the first, but it also cost me my voice. It cost me my own needs because I was always looking at things through the lens of familia, which of course is one of our cultural values as Latinos. So there's those high family expectations. And on a very personal note, I will just say how this even played out for me and how we kind of step in when I mentioned the overbearing responsibility that we might feel is my brother passed away when I was 27. This is it'll be 20 years actually this year in August. It'll be 20 years. But at the time I was 27, my brother passed away unexpectedly. And this is an example of where I stepped in and I was definitely grieving, definitely sad, definitely going through all my emotions, but I also went into what needs to get done. What do I need to take care of? And that was everything. That was having to, call my sister's boyfriend and tell him to drive her here. It was having to break the news to her. It was, cleaning up things. It was planning the funeral. It was laying out the clothes. It was writing the obituary. It was literally making the calls. It was everything, right? And that's an extreme version, but it was in that moment that eldest daughter just kicked in, and I had to get everything done and take care of everything else, all the things, and then also take care of my family, right? Make sure my mom was okay, make sure my dad was okay, make sure my sister and my younger brother were okay too. And so an extreme version, but again, that's what I had to do. And I will say the positive thing about that was I did take care of everything. And in some ways I felt that was, the last way that I could show my love and honor my brother. And so in some ways I felt it was not so much an obligation because I have to do it, but it would be the last time that I would be able to do it. And the positive thing was that my brother-in-law, I'm so grateful to him. Afterwards, I had a trip planned to Colorado with another friend, a road trip, and I wasn't going to go on it because of my family. And my brother-in-law said, "You know what? Like, you've done all this, like, go." And so I did go, and obviously it wasn't like really vacation. It was more of just a getaway, but I'm glad that I provided that space for myself in order to grieve in a way that maybe I hadn't been able to because, I was just in the mode of do. And that's what a lot of us do as eldest daughters. We will power through things. I don't know, maybe you can relate. If you can relate, let me know in the chat. You can power through anything. And again, being transparent, over the last couple weeks, had some health issues. I look pretty good online, and right now I'm showing up as the best that I can right now, but I've been in some really chronic pain to find out that I've got some serious stuff going on. And I was even thinking about it this morning in a conversation with my friend, because we'll just power through anything, put on the happy face, even if we're feeling horrible, right? And so I might be laying in bed in a half hour beforehand, putting on makeup and trying to myself look presentable just so that I can get through the thing that needs to be done. And I think there's a balance, because sometimes there are things that we need to do, but it's also like, what can I let go of? And hey, if I need to stay in bed for 3 hours afterwards, I'm going to give myself permission to do that. But by nature, I think we have this habit of just, let me just power through. I'm not going to complain about it. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to get done. And I'll take care of myself later. And of course, that can also really be harmful. So we need to be very cognizant about that. And then the third thing is with Cinderella is a lack of recognition. So Cinderella's hard work was always taken for granted, and she received little acknowledgement. And I think many of us can also say that we feel underappreciated for our contributions at home, and sometimes at work, and maybe even in society. And this is really hard, right? And this is, like I said, what started my own exploration a little more into the eldest daughter syndrome, was because in April, I was speaking at an event at the ASE conference. I was speaking on imposter syndrome. It was one of the first, it's actually the second event I've ever spoken to in a live audience. Most of the time I'm doing my stuff virtually. And I was really excited about the opportunity to share, to be quite honest with you. And I had been preparing for it. I was excited. Like, everyone at ASE is like familia to me. So I just love the community. And I really wanted validation afterwards particularly from my mom, to say like, hey, like, buen trabajo, good job. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, you put yourself out there, you got up in front of a crowd. And I got back from the event, and my mom and my kids were staying with me at a hotel. And it was like, I didn't hear anything. It was crickets, right? Like there's no validation. My kids asked me how it went. But there was no acknowledgement from my mom that I really wanted. And the beautiful thing was that someone had that was close to me stepped in and said how proud of me that she was for putting myself out there. And we just had this beautiful moment, and that was really healing to me. But I will say that self-validation is key when you're not getting the recognition that you want and we're expecting it externally. It can be disappointing at times, but we have to learn to validate ourselves and find comunidad that can also support our efforts. And then also just understanding that your journey is your journey, just like my journey is my journey. And it's not anyone else's responsibility to always understand that. I love my mother. I know she loves me. And sometimes she just doesn't have the capacity or the understanding to know like why something might be important, and that's okay. Right. And so I have to also be able to give her grace. The fourth one is sacrificing personal goals. And so just like Cinderella kind of put aside all of her dreams in order to meet her family's expectations, we often do the same thing. We sacrifice our personal aspirations in order to prioritize our family's needs and expectations. And I just recently wrote about this, about like whether you're living your dreams, like your own dreams, your own version of success, or are you living someone else's? Because so often as Latinos, we think of the collective. We put and especially as women, right? And I've talked about the beliefs of Marianismo. We put everyone else's needs before our own. We don't take the job out of state because it means leaving our family, or we don't pursue creative endeavors because we're risk adverse, or we start to disconnect from ourselves so much that we don't even know who we are because we're just our family or our children. And then all of a sudden we're like, I don't know who I am. Like how do I find myself? And I've had many women. I do a lot of coaching around leadership and in the workplace. But I will say that probably 50% of my work is actually life coaching, because everything that's happening to you at work, or the way that you're experiencing, also affects your home life, and vice versa. Like we don't live our life in integrated boxes. We live our life all together. And so who you are at work is who you are at home, and vice versa. And yeah, you might show up a little bit differently, but you're still the same person. And so a lot of my work is like looking at not only the professional side of things, but the personal side of things, because again, they impact each other. So number 5 is silent struggles. Cinderella endures her hardship silently, right? Or at least with the little animals that she had around us, right? The little mice and whatever else, lizards or whatever it was. And many of us are also experiencing silent struggles. I call this we have the emotional labor. We're dealing with pressures and responsibilities without openly expressing our feelings. I'm thinking of the Disney movie Encanto. Was it Encanto? Yeah, I think it was Encanto with Luisa, right? Who was shouldering everyone else's. She was shouldering everyone else's burdens, right? And it was so heavy for her. I think it was Luisa. Tell me, someone drop in the chat if that was Luisa. But we're shouldering everyone else's burdens, and it's so heavy for us, and we feel like we're never good enough, and we act out of a place of hyper independence, and we never ask for help. And there was an article, and I've referred this to this article before because I think it's very, very eye-opening, and I hear about it. I hear about it all the time. And it came out by Time. I think it was within the last year, and it was called Is Self-Silencing Making Women Sick? And just to give you an idea, women account for 80% of autoimmune diseases. We're at a higher risk of suffering from chronic pain, long-term COVID, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, and we're twice as likely as men to die after a heart attack. We experience depression, anxiety, and PTSD at twice the rate of men and face a 9-fold higher prevalence of anorexia. And in 2022, a team of researchers at the University of Pittsburgh discovered that women of color who strongly agree with statements like, I rarely express my anger to those close to me, were 70% more likely to experience cardiovascular plaque that's associated with a higher risk of heart attack. And there's been more studies that have also connected self-silencing to irritable bowel syndrome, HIV, chronic fatigue syndrome, and cancer. So this is literally, the self-silencing is literally making us sick. So that was a lot. And like I said, we don't ask for help, right? Like the last 3 weeks that I was in chronic pain, I did not ask for help very much, really. I did ask for some accommodations, but I again was pushing through it, and I'm learning in this process too. I don't want to make it sound like that in every area that I've got it together, because I'm also learning because of my own experiences, right? And the hyper independence really can lead to a lack of boundaries and involvement. We can maybe engage ourselves in codependent relationships or enmeshment as well. We don't celebrate our successes or prioritize ourselves because we keep always pushing forward for the sake of our families or for the sake of others. And then lastly, I just want to touch on visibility being a major issue for many of us. And just like Cinderella wasn't really seen for her true worth until the prince found her slipper, we often also struggle to be recognized for who we are and what we bring to the table. And that's something that we definitely can change by stepping into our power, by intentionally and strategically making ourselves visible. I wrote down a quote, as a matter of fact. Let me pull it up real quick. As I was watching one of the newer versions of Cinderella, and the quote was, "The greatest risk is to be seen for who we truly are." And I thought that was very powerful. And so if you need support on that journey, remember, I'm here with you for leadership coaching and, to help you with confidence. But I don't want to stop there. Okay, so I want to talk about why I call this breaking the glass slipper. So the glass slipper symbolizes the expectations that are placed on us, whether it's through culture, whether it's through gender roles, whether it's society's norms that are placed on us. We have an opportunity to shatter some of these limiting beliefs and the roles that are imposed on us, so that we can embrace who we truly are, embrace our identity, embrace our dreams, our potential. And so I want to talk about some ways that we can empower and heal ourselves. And I brought these up before, and, kind of throughout, but I'm going to touch on them a little more. And one is validation recognition. So we need to be able to recognize ourselves for our hard work, for our sacrifices. We have to celebrate our achievements, and remind ourselves that our contributions are valuable, even if we're not getting it externally. Right? Even if we're not getting it externally, we can still recognize ourselves. I had a friend just last week who had reached a new milestone, and I said, "How are you going to celebrate?" And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, what if it's something simple like just writing yourself a love letter and just thanking yourself for just constantly showing up?" Right? And so that could be a way to validate yourself. It could be waking up in the mirror and telling yourself every day how awesome you are. My Thea, I love her so much, and she passed away. But one of the things I always remember about her was she would get up in the morning, she would look at herself in the mirror, and she would like throw herself kisses and be like, "Ay, mi reina." And like, I thought she was so silly for doing those things, but she really did tell me, she was teaching me and modeling for me what self-love looks like. And with that, don't just focus on the actual achievement or accomplishment, but also focus on your growth, right? Focus on the progress, focus on the learnings that you took out of it, not just on the end result. Number 2 is, and just really, I want to encourage self-care, knowing that balance is not always attainable. Some days your best might look like 50%. Some days it might look like 130%. And that's okay. Take time to prioritize yourself, the way that you're eating, you're sleeping, your well-being. Give yourselves permission to say no. Go out and do things that bring you joy, even if it's just taking, a 20-minute walk outdoors and, getting some movement and fresh air in. 3 is find your godmothers, right? Okay, so maybe there's not a real fairy godmother, but find your fairy godmothers through mentorship, through comunidad, through sponsors, through guidance, but find people that can understand the challenges that you're going through and connect with communities that can give you support and encouragement, right? And that's why I'm always encouraging you guys, connect with each other, because not everyone knows what we go through as Latinas, and we need to be able to support each other. I want to foster a community of collaboration over competition. That's really important to me. And then number 4 is therapy. Like, I'm a big proponent of therapy. It can be extremely beneficial. It helps us to be able to let go of some of the emotional burden that we're feeling. We have an outlet to address some of the emotional labor that we're experiencing. If we're not good with boundaries, we can learn how to put up boundaries. Even like one of the biggest benefits to me with therapy has been able to name either my feelings or name the experience that I'm going through. And then once I've been able to name it, it's helped me to decide, like, what steps do I take next, or how do I empower the situation, or how do I empower myself through this situation? And then, of course, there's always different programs that you can, participate in, whether it's workshops, coming to live streams like this. I love when you guys engage, getting involved with different leadership programs, things that can really help you build your confidence, that can foster community, and then just help you up level and realize that potential. So remember that the glass slipper is about redefining your worth and identity. You are definitely more than any role that is imposed on you. So embrace your strengths. Know that you are worthy of recognition and support. Don't forget, there is no prince coming to save you. If there is a prince, give him my phone number. I am single, just saying, ha ha ha. But no, really, it's up to us to create our own happily ever after. And that really means that we have to take control of our lives, be the CEO of our lives, of our career. We have to set healthy boundaries. We have to make decisions that allow us to prioritize our well-being, not just our well-being, but our happiness too. And I'm always going to say that visibility is a crucial role in the process. Being able to make ourselves seen and heard is powerful and helps us in that journey towards, being more empowered. And I'm happy to support you through that. So a couple key takeaways. I'm going to open up for questions or comments here in a moment, but a couple key takeaways. One of the strengths as eldest daughters that we bring is that we're natural leaders and problem solvers. And that's great. Other eldest daughters that are notable include Oprah, Sheryl Sandberg, which is like the founder of Lean In, J.K. Rowling. I'm looking at my list over here. And Beyonce. We can't forget the Queen Bee, Beyonce. We often face high expectations and a sense of overbearing responsibility. But despite all of this, we are also, like I said, we're great leaders. We do tend to struggle with perfectionism and self-doubt. And I've shared some different videos and posts about this. I think it was an audio event I had a couple weeks ago talking about perfectionism. That is something that one of the challenges that we run into, and we do struggle with, isolation because of the hyper independence. But we are really resilient. We are really strong leaders. And so that's the plus side. So I want to thank everyone for joining me today. And I hope this discussion resonates with you and provides some insight to what you're facing. If nothing else, I hope that it validates you and that you know that you're definitely not alone in this journey. And there's resources and community to support you. I'm here to support you. connect with each other. And, stay tuned. Next week, I'm going to be here with my friend, Ref. We're going to be talking about shared strengths, about how Latinos can support Latinas more and how there is strength in numbers. So I'll be back next week at the same time to talk about that a little more in depth. And if you're looking to break your own glass slipper and increase your visibility, again, reach out to me, DM. We'll work together to create your happily ever after. And you can be the hero to your own story. I'm just going to look through and see if there's any questions. Feel free to drop questions in there in the chat. And just kind of looking through the comments here. Cynthia, you also went through meetings. And we're mistaken as the parent. I think that's a big one. We feel like we're the second parent for many of us. Let's see here. Olga, you can't relate because you're the middle child, but now you can be an ally of the older daughter. That's right. All right. Yeah. Alejandra says we're not allowed to fall apart. Right. And we have to reframe that. We are allowed to have our feelings. We're human beings, not human doings. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. It doesn't look like there's any questions, but if you do have questions and don't want to put it in the chat, feel free to DM me. I promise I will respond to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope that you have a great week. Thanks, y'all. Bye. Bye now.